Welcome to Crime Beat. I'm Anthony Robart. Tonight, a police officer gunned down in broad daylight. A routine traffic stop over nothing more than a noisy muffler. Ends with a 30-year veteran of the Montreal Police Department killed on what should have been a day off.
You heard that muffler? That would have been a ticket. That's not what happened.
It was Senneville on a quiet road. Nothing ever happens.
He hears that the policeman's been shot in Senneville. He says, oh my God, he says, that's André.
He bought on the Sunday a new motorhome for his retirement plan. On a Monday, he lost his life.
Nobody knew what to look for. There was no information.
If you don't catch somebody first few weeks, it's tough.
And now, here's Mike Armstrong with The Kindly Cop Who Killed Constable André Lalonde.
It happened in one of those places where you'd least expect it. The village of Senneville, Quebec is tucked away on the western tip of the island of Montreal. It has a population under 1,000 on an island of more than 2 million. If the West Island is the quietest part of Montreal, Senneville is the quietest corner of the quietest part.
I remember my dad always said that, oh, I'm going to take my retirement in the West Island.
It was the perfect spot for Patrick Lalonde's father to wind down his career. Constable André Lalonde was, by 1996, an accident investigator with the Montreal Urban Community Police Department, working out of what was then Station 11.
If you compare at the beginning of his career, he was downtown, he was Saint Michel, he was at the 42, 44, the
Tough
station, and he had a lot of action at that time. So for him, the last 10 years of his career, it was the best place to be, and he really enjoyed his place over here.
It was safe.
It was safe. No one's think that something like this is going to happen.
Not here.
Not here.
It was something he had done hundreds of times. Constable André Lalonde had years of experience pulling drivers over, whether it was something like missing a red light or speeding. On the morning of April 29th, 1996, Lalonde was in his patrol car waiting for his partner to pick up radar equipment. As he waited, he worked. He pulled over a cyclist who hadn't stopped at a stop sign and gave him a warning. A few minutes later, another passing cyclist tipped his cap to say hello. Lalonde waved back. That cyclist was a retired local resident, André Proulx. He would tell investigators that seconds after that tip of the cap, as he was biking away, he was passed by a brown car with a very loud muffler. The police officer, Constable Lalonde, he said, was following it.
Well, instead of parking and doing nothing, he decided to check the stop sign and intercepted this car.
According to Proulx, the lights on Lalonde's cruiser were on and the car pulled over. He only saw the driver from a distance, a white male in his 20s. Now, Lalonde could have called dispatch and run the plates on the vehicle. Had he done that, he would have spoken to Sylvie Laroche, the police dispatcher on duty that morning. She knew Lalonde and says he likely thought he was simply making a routine traffic stop.
That wasn't a big thing, it was a muffler. But we knew where he was because people called.
That's interesting. What was the standard practice? When he pulled over somebody with a noisy muffler, does he call dispatch to say what he's doing?
That would be the rule.
But it was just a noisy muffler.
Yeah.
It could have been done, but it wasn't. We pulled over so many cars, that was his job, and that was basically my job also. So, we didn't run every plate before getting out of the car. we would run the plate when we got in the car, you know, to check and see exactly what we had. He heard that muffler. He went to catch the guy. That would have been a ticket. Thank you, have a good day. That's not what happened.
The cyclist, Prou, was down the street by now, but saw what happened next. Constable Lalonde stepped out of his cruiser and approached the vehicle. Through the open window, the driver opened fire. 2 shots went off. Lalonde stumbled back, trying to draw his weapon. Then a 3rd shot, and he slumped to the ground. The car then peeled off, leaving behind it a cloud of smoke. According to the coroner's report, Lalonde was shot with a .357 caliber handgun and hit twice. 1 round hit him in the upper chest of the left side. The other hit the handle of his service revolver, still in the holster, and fragmented. Parts of the bullet went into Constable Lalonde's forearm and his side. It was a woman in this home who heard the shots and alerted dispatch. She ran outside, checked on the fallen officer, and picked up the radio in the police cruiser.
She took the microphone, and I didn't know who she was. And I asked her, because there was only one lady police officer in this station. So I said, "Is it Constable?" And she didn't answer. And I said, "Are you a citizen, madam?" And then we knew it was a citizen who took the microphone from the police car.
What was that conversation like?
Oh my God. She just said that the police was shot.
Here you got André Lalonde right here.
On the ground, being worked on.
Being worked on.
It is a day that is still painful for Stéphane Brunet. He was a reporter on the West Island back in '96. He knew a lot of local police officers, including Lalonde. Brunet also lived close by. As soon as he heard an officer had been shot, he jumped in his car.
I drove, and as I was driving, I could hear the officers talking on the radio, and I was eliminating who it could be. And one of them, I was scared, was my uncle, Rémi Villeneuve. Rémi Villeneuve was an agent, was constable for Station 11, and I didn't hear about it. He was off, just like André was supposed to be off that day.
I just want to make sure, you were literally here before the ambulance was here.
I was here before the ambulance, yeah. And cops were arriving, police officers were arriving. So when I saw André Lalonde, it was a shock, a big shock. It was, that was hard. That was, I can tell you, was the most painful event to this day I saw as a local crime reporter, as a local reporter.
They worked on him hard.
Yep, they did, yeah. I remember vividly, they worked very hard on him to revive him. And at one point, you realize it's over. See, I'm right there, yeah.
Brunet has never watched the video of that day. Seeing it in person was too painful. They are moments burned into his memory.
When I arrived, I didn't recognize him. It's one of the fellow police officers who told me. I said, who is he? And he says, it's André. André meant André Lalonde right away. So he was there. He was having all the help that he could have.
Investigators poured over the scene, even as ambulance technicians worked on their colleague. The emotion too much for some, including the man who had minutes earlier been picking up the radar equipment to meet Lalonde.
You see big guys like Constable André, which was his partner. He arrived pretty early on the scene, and with much respect, he was crying like a baby. You know, this big tough guy you see on the road, and that wasn't supposed to happen.
ambulance finally left, Constable Lalonde was taken to hospital. He would be pronounced dead at Lakeshore General in Pointe Claire at 11:15 a.m.
After the break. If Lalonde had not been alone when he pulled over the vehicle, would the gunman have reacted the same way? Constable André Lalonde, just weeks away from retirement, takes an extra shift. It would be his last. And now back to Mike Armstrong with The Kindly Cop. Who killed Constable André Lalonde?
It was at this corner that Constable Lalonde lost his life. He pulled over a car for an infraction that likely wouldn't have been anything more than a warning and was killed. There are things police officers do that they know are dangerous. What happened here 25 years ago wasn't one of them. Stéphane Wall was a police officer at the time of Constable Lalonde's murder. Lalonde was with Station 11, he was at neighboring Station 12. Wall is now retired, but trains officers in the use of force. He says Lalonde went from what was a routine traffic stop to his life being in danger before he could even react.
It takes 1 second to a suspect who, I am the suspect, I have the gun on me, I have the gun here. I saw the police officers coming, 5 feet, 4 feet, 2 feet, bang.
You can do it in a second.
1 second.
Paul Dufault was the director of Station 11 at the time. Constable Lalonde was one of his officers.
The whole station, Station 11, now Station 1, has probably the lowest criminality rate on the island of Montreal. It is quiet out there, especially in Senneville, and it was a surprise. It wasn't Pointe Claire, it wasn't Kirkland, it was Senneville on a quiet road, Senneville Road, where nothing ever happens.
Nathalie Lalonde was in her 20s when her father was killed. She didn't have any children, she now has 2. In a way, she says, that's what hurts most.
I wish my dad was there to meet my kids, to play with my kids, and this I'm missing my dad a lot.
It's been 25 years.
Yeah.
Does it feel like 25 years?
For me, it's yesterday.
April 29th, 1996 was supposed to be a day off for André Lalonde. The 51-year-old veteran officer, married, father of 2, took an extra shift. He was just weeks from retiring, and working the extra hours meant his last day would be earlier. He was that close to the end. Lalonde and his wife had already sold the family home, planning for the next chapter. Their first trip was all set. They were headed to Alaska. The day before he was killed, they'd made a new purchase, an upgrade.
He bought on the Sunday a new motorhome for his retirement plan. On a Monday, he lost his life.
That morning, Lalonde was in his favorite vehicle, 1178. He used it often, sometimes alone, sometimes with another officer in another vehicle. Retired police officer Maurice Trudeau also worked at Station 11.
When I worked with him, often we would get together to work, and he would operate the radar and I would intercept the vehicles, and we did that often. And the day that he died, he was going to do the same thing with another police officer, Constable L'Abbé.
Lalonde was already out in the Senneville area on patrol. Constable Gérald L'Abbé was closer to the station. The pair agreed he'd go back to pick up the radar equipment and then they'd meet up. That never happened.
L'Abbé went to the station to pick up the radar. And as he's inside looking, getting all the parts for the radar machine, he hears that the policeman's been shot in Senneville. And he says, oh my God, he says, that's André.
He was a good man. He was a good family man, and he was a good policeman.
So, on that day, you're the director of that local station.
That's right.
What do you remember about that day?
Well, actually, I remember that day I had an appointment. I was, honest to God, I was at a doctor's office and my pager went off. I remember that very clearly, and I called the station, was going, and then I found out, and I rushed back right away. That was it, I rushed back, went to the scene.
What did they tell you? Or when you called the office, did they tell you right away?
Well,
There's no bad beating around the bush.
We had an officer down, André Lalonde, and that was it. I asked where, and they told me where, and I went right there, right away.
This was Station 11 on that day. Dufault's officers, Lalonde's colleagues, devastated with more questions than clues, and a killer on the loose.
Yeah, they were upset. It was bad. I know that.
The guys tend to be friends, I guess.
Exactly. Well, yes, in a station like that, any station, it's a group, and they stick together.
When an officer is murdered, I imagine that the force throws a lot of resources at it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
How big an operation was it?
All hands on deck. For homicide, identity, everything. You know? But there's only so much you can do.
Coming up, the suspect's car is located, but will this lead investigators closer to finding the gunman? Montreal Police Constable André Lalonde is shot and killed, pulling over a car with a noisy muffler. The investigation is ramping up and the news is spreading. Now back to Mike Armstrong and the kindly cop who killed Constable André Lalonde.
The Lalonde family knew the dangers of policing. Starting his career in 1966, André Lalonde kept a scrapbook of clippings, cases he'd worked on, pages of memories as he learned the ropes. The person who was teaching the fresh-faced rookie about policing was his partner, Aimé Pelletier, a veteran officer with a handlebar mustache and some life lessons.
My father always drink only milk when he went to the police. And but Amy said, you have to drink something else, blah, blah, blah. So after that, he started to drink coffee, but that was Amy.
He taught him that?
Yes.
To be honest, I've known maybe 3 or 4 people in my lifetime that have had handlebar mustache.
Retired officer Maurice Trudeau was on the force when Lalonde and Pelletier were paired up. He remembers November 2nd, 1974, the day Lalonde's partner, mentor, and friend was killed.
They were answering a call for a robbery on St. Lawrence Boulevard, and they saw 3 suspects. They pulled up in front of them. The suspects started running. Lalonde ran after 1. Aimé Pelletier ran after 2. And Aimé Pelletier was shot 3 times. Pelletier then made it back to the police car to call for help. Lalonde, when he came back with his suspect, saw that Pelletier was slouched over the wheel with the microphone in his hand, and he had passed away right there.
After burying his partner, Lalonde would remember him with a sort of tribute for the rest of his life. There are no family pictures without that big handlebar mustache that Lalonde grew, and everyone knew why.
My father was a big mustache. It was always like, that was funny.
After Aimé, he always had a mustache.
Yeah.
I always laugh with him about that. Okay, sometimes you're gonna sleep, and I'm gonna cut your mustache, and it's the only time that he was, don't do that because you're gonna have my.
Really? Right?
Yeah. So it's the definition of my father. Everyone's of my friends or everyone knows my father. Oh, the guy with the mustache. Yeah, it was André.
Knowing the dangers of the profession didn't mean Lalonde's family ever expected something to happen to him. When her father was shot, Nathalie Lalonde was at work. When police showed up, she assumed it was for someone else.
The big bus he came to me and he said, "Oh, Nathalie, we have to talk to you." I said, "Okay." But I went outside and I saw the policeman. But I said, for me, I never thought of my father, so I said, "What's wrong?" I know I did not do anything wrong. So the policeman said, "We have to talk to you. Do you know André Lalonde?" I said, "Yes." "Why?" They said, "You have to come with me in the car." I said, "But why? You have to tell me why." I was like this.
Shaking.
So, and there was a lady with me in the back. So, and all the time I ask, "Where did you bring me? Where's my father?" But they never answer me. So, because they don't want to tell me.
I arrived over there like a usual day, but
As that was happening, Patrick Lalonde was at school north of Montreal. He was in class when the director came to the door and told him police were on their way. They wanted to talk to him.
At the beginning, I said, "Okay, that may be a joke. Something it's for his retirement. It's a party for his retirement." But when I was in the car with the two upper management of the police, it's okay, something goes wrong.
The trip from the school to the hospital should have taken 30 or 40 minutes. With the sirens going, it took less than 15. That, even though the officers didn't know how to get to the Lakeshore General Hospital and had to stop to ask for directions.
I was the last one arrive at the hospital. When I entered the hospital, I realized that, oh, this is bad, because I feel that everyone's look at me and say, maybe this is his son. So I feel like that. And I heard that crying over there. I kind of recognized that maybe it could be my mom. I got the chance to see his body. I was able to see that, yeah, it's real. He's dead, but he was still warm.
The one member of the family who wasn't reached right away was Constable Lalonde's mother. She was home watching television and saw enough to recognize the officer on the ground.
My grandmother was 5 feet, little, really small, and she told us that she had a pen in her hand, and she broke up the pen. She recognized that it was André. So that was bad for my grandmother at that time.
That's how your grandmother realized it
Yeah.
was her son?
She saw that on TV, so.
Every police officer in the city is on alert. One of their brothers has just been killed. The family is being told at the hospital, while just a few blocks away, devastated officers gather in the parking lot at Station 11. Everyone wants to find the gunman, but there's a problem.
Nobody knew what to look for. You know, there was no information on basically on what the car was or who it was or anything like that.
Where did he go?
That question wouldn't take long to answer. After shooting Officer Lalonde, the gunman took to the highway and headed east. That same morning, the vehicle would be found just north of downtown. Whoever the gunman was drove directly to this spot, doused the car in gasoline, set it on fire, and abandoned it. The vehicle was a 1991 Ford Tempo. It had been reported stolen days earlier. Burning it was something criminals did often to cars used in crimes to destroy any evidence they may have left behind.
The fingerprints, air, maybe the police officer, if they find the car and it's not burned, maybe they're gonna, oh, I have this, I have that, I have that. Experienced criminals, they're gonna burn the car after.
It worked. There was nothing to tie the vehicle to anyone. Just about the only thing investigators had to go on were theories.
Why would somebody who's just been pulled over for a noisy muffler, what could lead them to shoot a police officer?
Jail. Jail. The only reason I can think of, he did not want to be caught. For whatever reason, he did not want to be caught by the police because he was going back to jail. big time. Had to be something serious.
Coming up, police take a closer look at the site of the burned out vehicle. Why had the suspect driven to that particular spot? And did he have a second car waiting? That's coming up on Crime Beat after the break. As investigators try to figure out why Constable Lalonde was killed in broad daylight after pulling over a car with a noisy muffler, a possible link between the gunman and organized crime begins to emerge. We now return to the kindly cop who killed Constable André Lalonde.
In the days that followed, there was a massive outpouring of support for the force and the family. Officers from across North America made the trip for the funeral to the Lalonde's hometown, Saint-Eustache, Quebec.
How difficult was that funeral?
I remember my sister, my mom was really, I would say, tired, and as a man, you feel that okay, I have to, I have to be there for them. That was a hard time, but I take all of the sympathy from the people coming at the funeral house. And that gave me a lot of energy to pass over the week because it was nice to see all the people, police coming from other country, police from the rest of the Canada coming at the service, coming at the funeral house. I met a lot of people at that time, but that was the energy that I can, and I respect the people that they came for that, and. I remember that I stay at the entrance to make sure that I saw everyone, because sometimes my mom was tired, my sister was tired, but I have the feeling that I have to be there for them to
say thank you.
To say thank you.
You know, everybody has not the same.
Everybody has a different reaction.
Yes. So for me, I was like too much people. For my brother, he likes that. Too much,
to have the support and the people around.
He liked that, and my mother also. But me, I was like, so I know I saw a lot of people, but don't ask me if I saw someone or some. I don't remember. You have too much.
You just remember it was big.
Yes. Yes.
Constable Lalonde was laid to rest 7 days after he was murdered. There still hadn't been an arrest, but the family was confident one was coming.
At the beginning of that story, said maybe they're gonna find it 5, 6, 7 days, 2 weeks later, they're gonna find him for sure. It's the police. The police catch everyone.
Now, a major part of the investigation would be around location. First, where the murder took place. The car was driving away from the neighboring town of Saint-Anne-de-Bellevue, not even a kilometer down the street. The suspect was coming from there. Why? The other location was where the vehicle was found. Why had the suspect driven to that spot? Did he have a second car waiting? Did he live in the neighborhood? Did a girlfriend live in the area?
It's tough. It's tough. If you don't catch somebody in the first few weeks, few months, a year, it's tough.
Investigators turned over every rock, even reaching out to leaders of organized crime to see if they knew anyone who may have been involved. The belief was whoever pulled the trigger and then burned the vehicle could have been an experienced criminal. likely one police were already looking for.
I would think so. I mean, why would anybody shoot a police officer if they were wanted for a ticket, you know, or just a regular warrant? You know, we pick up people every day on warrants. It had to be somebody that was wanted for something serious.
Now, Constable Lalonde's murder rocked the Montreal police force at a time when it was already shaken. Just 5 months earlier, the department had buried another officer in a murder that was still unsolved. Constable Odette Pinard was 30 years old, married, and a mother of 2. November 27, 1995, she was working at a small community station in the north end of the city, alone. There was a snowstorm starting and someone walked in off the street. Constable Pinard was at the front counter. The gunman shot once, hit Pinard in the head, and walked out. There were no witnesses, no cameras, and no known motive. Investigators believe the murder could have been a gang initiation, a diversion from another crime, or someone with a personal grudge against Pinard, police, or possibly women. The conclusion was the 2 killings were not related. But Constable Pinard's murder, all these years later, has still not been solved. Her parents say they expected that because Odette was a police officer, the murder would be solved quickly. That didn't happen.
Dans notre cas, nous autres, il y a quoi? Zéro.
The Pinards say they know nothing. 20 years after their daughter was killed, they still don't know why it happened. That, they say, is a heavy pain to carry.
On est devant le néant. Ça, je trouve ça lourd à porter. It's a backup of the blood pressure cuff.
Okay. Polygraph expert John Gallianos worked on the case. He conducted lie detector tests on both informants and suspects. He says police threw everything at the investigation.
They know who done it, but not enough evidence to charge these people and to get them convicted.
That's what you've heard.
That's what I know. Yeah.
The Lalonde case would follow the same path, one where investigators would get close, but not close enough. There were suspects. Police even linked the vehicle to at least 3 recent bank robberies. It had been the getaway car. But they were still never able to find sufficient evidence to charge anyone.
When Officer Lalonde is killed, and it's only months after another officer was killed, that has to affect the force.
Yeah.
How did people react to that?
In 4 years, in 5 years, we have several police officers shot by gun. So everybody was, what's happened? We upgrade the vigilance because we never know when we're going to be the next one.
I wouldn't be surprised that a guy like that killed André didn't go to jail. In 25 years, hasn't been caught to go to jail for something else. That's what I would think.
You think he's probably in for something else?
Absolutely, absolutely. But I have a feeling he's probably been arrested and got out and been arrested again. If the guy was a criminal like that, to shoot André like that because he didn't want to go to jail, I'm sure he got caught in something else. In 25 years, chances are he was picked up for something. Not for this, but for something else, and went inside. That's my feeling, my gut feeling.
After the break, how close will investigators get to catching Constable Lalonde's killer? A murder in broad daylight. The killer's car found burned. And for 25 years, a murderer on the loose. But do police already know who killed Constable André Lalonde? We now return to Mike Armstrong and the conclusion of the kindly cop. Who killed Constable André Lalonde?
All right, let's go. J'ai nommé la ligne en partant.
Patrick Lalonde has two sons. Both play hockey. He coaches one of his son's teams.
Go right. Go, Alexis.
There is no question his father, his son's grandfather, would have been in the stands for some of these games. Constable André Lalonde never had the chance to even meet any of his 4 grandchildren. He's missed 25 years of important moments in his family's life.
At the end of my school, my wedding, the kids, this is something that I will always miss because it was not there and part of that happiness in the family. But 51 years old, yeah, it's still young to lose their life like this.
When did they put this up?
A year later, a year after the crime was.
The worst thing to happen to Patrick Lalonde, his father's murder, happened right at this corner. And yet it is where he goes to remember his father.
We have the memory of my dad over here where he lost his life, at that corner.
The family has been coming to this spot every year. This was 1998. We covered the 2nd anniversary. It was Constable Lalonde's partner who petitioned the village and had the stone and plaque put up. This was one of the only times Constable Labbé has spoken publicly.
Le souvenir me revient tout le temps quand je viens dans le secteur, mais en fin de compte, j'essaie de vivre avec ça.
The memory comes back to me whenever I'm in this sector, he says. I try to live with it. It's a crime that's both horrified police officers and stumped them. 2 homicide detectives are still working on the case full time, but police won't confirm whether they have a suspect.
Without divulging any information that could maybe ruin the investigation or alert any possible suspects, we can't tell you that. But some of the leads are very good leads.
On vient toutes les années, puis que ce soit les gens-là.
On the 25th anniversary, the ceremony was smaller than it would have been due to COVID. But there were 25 police cruisers, one for every year. There was also this moment. Patrick Lalonde's sons meeting officers who knew their grandfather. 2 men who were rookies at the time of the murder, but organized the parade to remember him. There is a legacy to Lalonde's death. Things changed for the Montreal police force. Bulletproof vests became mandatory, and all vehicles now have cameras. The day of the murder, car 1178 didn't have a camera, and Lalonde wasn't wearing a vest. That happened often. The bulletproof vests in the 90s weren't as comfortable as they are today. But the other legacy is the frustration. This is a crime, still unpunished.
Could you have ever thought 25 years ago we still wouldn't know who did it?
Absolutely not, because I remember the energy Montreal Urban Community Police officers put in, the effort. You know, you can surely believe it was a top priority, very top priority.
There are theories to what happened here, April 29th, 1996, but there is also a suspect. A man, according to sources, investigators couldn't build a strong enough case against to charge. The Lalonde family has been told police still keep an eye on him, even though he's behind bars.
They kind of know who it is, but it's hard for them to bring in front of the court and prosecute, yeah. Because I think that he did other crime, so he was in jail for these other crime. But for this one, he was not catch.
That suspect is a career criminal who has spent most of his adult life in prison. The only time he was out was a short window back in the mid-90s that includes the year Lalonde was killed. He's now serving a life sentence for shooting a man as well as several bank robberies. Now, police in the months after Constable Lalonde's murder said they had linked the getaway vehicle to 3 bank robberies. They also said after analysis of the bullets that hit Lalonde, ballistics experts were able to link the murder weapon to 3 armed robberies. Police even said publicly they were close to an arrest, but that never happened. Despite everything they had, they still couldn't mount a case against the suspect.
They have some proof, but not enough. How we can keep this inside of him and never talk?
25 years, you'd think he'd say something to someone.
Yeah.
How much hope do you have that maybe someday they do solve this?
I hope before he die, he's gonna say something. I hope so.
That suspect's past attempts to apply for parole were denied, but he can apply again in 2023. For now, the parole board says he's still a danger to reoffend.
We are there to protect the public. We are there also to protect us. We want to take in custody the suspect. This is our job. So a lot of time we have some suspect. The investigator have, or maybe that's one, but we don't have the proof. So after that, it's a cold case.
You just hope that the guy slips up at some point, says something to somebody.
Yeah, sure. Everybody is hope for that. If he make a confidence to somebody, I hope that this person is gonna call the investigator and tell the information. If it's not, if you don't talk with anybody about that, it will be difficult to find the guy.
You know, I think it's going to be a tough one to solve. You know, maybe it will come out one day, but, you know, that's wishful thinking.
What's it like to drive by here?
Each time you see what happened on that morning of April 29th. It's vivid, it's still there. It's 25 years and it's still crystal clear. You still see the same people, you still see it. You don't always tell the people you're with.
Sometimes you're with people and you don't want to tell them what you're thinking of because it's awful.
It's awful. It's awful. Sainte-Ville is as quiet as it could be. A nice neighborhood. It's beautiful. Why here? You know, you always say downtown Montreal. Wrong. Sainte-Ville.
How frustrating is it? I guess from what I'm getting from you, it feels like you can't allow yourself to focus on that.
No, you can live like that, to say, okay, I'm waiting for that. I'm waiting for that guy. It's frustrating. When I talk to people that doesn't know too much about the story, they said, how come you are not more frustrated about this? Well, we are frustrated at that time. Life goes on, but you have to continue your life, and
it would be unhealthy to concentrate on that.
I think it's not going to be good for your health, for sure.
It wouldn't be good for you. It wouldn't be good for your wife. It wouldn't be good for your children.
And if people around me, if I'm always talking about about that person, well, it's not healthy for anyone.
Yesterday, I read again what's happened to my father. And my daughter was behind me. Sorry.
There is a pain that isn't going away. It's changed. Maybe it's not as sharp as it was in those first weeks, months, and years. But decades later, there is still no closure, and that makes moving on hard. A chapter in this story still hasn't been written.
I always say that if the guy who killed my father know him, well, he's probably going to take a coffee with him, and my dad's going to say, hey, take care of you and have a good day. But he doesn't take the time, I guess, to talk to my father on that day.
Constable André Lalonde, remembered for his kindness, generosity, and that unmistakable handlebar mustache. His family and former colleagues will continue trying to get answers, hoping one day André Lalonde's killer is caught and brought to justice. I'm Anthony Robart. Thank you for joining us tonight on Crime Beat. Want more episodes of Crime Beat? Listen to the Crime Beat podcast now for free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. And for past episodes of Crime Beat, check out our YouTube page or download the Global Go app to watch on your phone.